This meeting to order. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes of October 2nd?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of October 2nd.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Next, we have two topics for discussion today. The first one is discussion and approval of resolution 2019-30 enhancing the prioritization of farmland preservation in Cumberland County, preserving 30,000 acres by the year 2030. This draft has been revised and edited several times. It was reviewed by our solicitors, Farmland. Stephanie or Dana, do you have any comments, questions, or concerns?
Nothing additional to add unless you have questions for me.
I do at the moment. Commissioners have any questions or comments?
Well, we can talk on the resolution if I put it on make a motion to adopt resolution 2019-30, enhancing the prioritization of farmland preservation in Cumberland County. So I'll make a motion to adopt.
Do you have motions or second? I'll second the motion. Do we have any further comments? Anybody on the board?
Yeah,
Yes, go ahead.
I guess I'll go first because I'm sure there'll be others. I'm going to be voting against this for some very good reasons in my opinion. Goals in conjunction with our smart growth strategy. Farmland made one objection to the character of the languages included in it, and there have been no real changes. So I don't know that there has been the type of consideration of alternatives that's being applied here. I'm not going to take a lot of time on this, but I do feel there's a few things that need to be said because so much of what I've said in the past has been twisted and misrepresented. So I've voted many, many times for money for farmland easements, frankly, more money than both of you gentlemen. So, and I think I can speak to it with some authority. The first part of it does mention that a goal and priority of Cumberland County is this issue in regards to the comprehensive plan. And that's true, as I've said many times. This is one of many goals, and there are no carve-outs for any of those other goals. There are no carve-outs for anything. So apparently it's important enough in some people's perception to mention that this is being driven by a public opinion survey, and that is our reason for doing it because of the response rate, et cetera, et cetera. I won't go into the specifics of the efficacy of the survey process that is utilized, but I do have some questions on that. More importantly, I think that it's important that we recognize that we don't make policy by public survey in this county. If that were the case, we could just do surveys and we wouldn't even need a board of commissioners. And actually, that's the same argument that was used against me when I said it should go to a ballot question, which I still think would be a superior way to handle a significant increase in funding on this issue. So the resolution continues to say about that the funding has fluctuated over the years without a consistent funding method. That much is true. That's also true of pretty much most of our budget. And that is a result of the fact that economic conditions change, our financial condition changes, and we should have that flexibility, quite frankly. Not that there wouldn't be a need for some more consistency, and I think we could have achieved that in other ways, but those ways were never put on the table. So there are numerous references in here that I think, frankly, make my point to that this is less than really factually or empirically oriented proposal, and that is certain comments in regards to the future of the agricultural economy, the continuous local food production. These have some truth, but none of these things are under immediate or urgent threat right now. The statement that the farms protect our natural environment, including important groundwater supplies, is somewhat spurious, quite frankly. I understand people think that it's preferable to housing development perhaps, or warehouse or something of that nature. But we should be truthful with people that candidly, intensive farming practices are not necessarily great for the environment. They have regularly impaired water quality. They have been one of the most intensive drivers of habitat destruction and species loss. And all that's documented in even very recent studies. All which is to say that I'm not saying this to pick on farms. Farms are businesses. And like all businesses, we make trade-offs. We're willing to accept that there are certain costs, detrimental costs to our society because of the good that they bring us. And that is definitely true of our farms. We are willing to tolerate some of these things within limits. It was not that many years ago that we gave out farmland preservation money to farms that refused to even comply with the county's standards on runoff. That has now changed. That was quite a topic of debate. So I think that's the minimum standard we should be setting. Minimum. So I am not in any way insulting the role of the farm in our economy or our community. I'm simply trying to put it into a proper factual context. So there are several other comments here that I have an issue with, but I'm not going to go into all of those. I will say that that one of the flaws that I'm looking at here is there is a passing mention of municipal partnerships, but there's really nothing built into this that provides any type of incentive that I can see. In fact, perhaps the exact opposite. So this mentions that there's a need for a consistent budgetary policy that addresses the need for additional resources to preserve additional prime farm acres. Well, there's also other issues, many other issues, that also require more consistency and additional resources. And I'm going to talk about those in just an instant here. So if you look at the last full paragraph, it basically says, we've set this goal and we're going to do whatever we have to do, i.e. spend whatever we have to spend to get to that goal. So there is a financial component to this, and we should not pretend that there is not. And just to repeat something I said before in the previous meeting, anybody who's telling you that we can have all of this and we can vastly increase this and it's not going to cost nobody nothing is not being honest with you. So I'll make my closing points here, and I'll try to make it succinctly. This resolution could have been, I think, a very positive thing, but as it is now, it has more to do with agriculture politics than it does with agriculture economics. I think putting this to a public vote right now underscores my opinion that it's really no accident that this is being put to a public vote 28 days before a commissioner's election. That's not the best way to make a 10-year commitment to out of the budget. This has taken what I have long said is an overly and perpetually politicized issue and potentially hyper-politicized it. So if we're going to go that path, there's a way to do that, and that can be, why don't you figure out how much it's going to cost to get this number of acres over 10 years and earmark a tax increase for it, and then we'll put it out there and let the public vote for the various options that are available to them on paying for this. So I don't think that's a bad idea, because I do firmly believe that these decisions for 10 years worth of funding is a decision that should rest with future boards. So that election becomes even more relevant because we will have new boards seated soon with at least one new commissioner, maybe two. So the best thing I can say about the resolution is that I consider it to be very good politics. But as is often the case, good politics is bad policy, particularly bad budget policy. We don't do carve-outs, in particular because the commissioners have a significant constraint on how much of the budget is under our control already. I honestly cannot understand why you would want to take that percentage and increase it that much more and simply tie the hands of the commissioners in making what should be fluid and flexible decisions on managing our finances. So I'm very concerned about this policy of a carve-out because I think it's going to be only a matter of a short time until the next round of requests for carve-outs take place, and we'll be sitting here with other members of the public, other interest groups, other department heads, asking us, isn't what we do as important or more than that issue? And frankly, some of them are. Many of them are. So we've been lucky that the last few years budget-wise have been reasonably easy for us. I've been here long enough to see when that has not been the case. We should not assume that the future years will be equally easy, and therefore we should, as I've been fond of saying, keep our powder dry, and we should be ready for an economic downturn, for any number of other scenarios that could be a problem. I did note that the minutes of the last meeting did confirm that, in response to my question, that this is very cleverly worded, I might add, that all staff is busy in the planning office with the program. If the program continues as it is the past 3 years, the staff has been able to work on the program without adding additional resources. That wasn't the question I asked. The question I asked was, if we do this vast increase, are there going to be additional personnel needs? I'm not sure I received a clear answer on that, and this is even muddier than the verbal answer I got. I think the implication from that is, yeah, we're going to have to also hire staff and expand the department to administer that. If I'm wrong, staff can feel free to correct me on that, because I would love to have a clear answer to the question that I've asked repeatedly now. So, with that said, I think the topic is one that frankly could have been handled better, and the concern I have is partially in regards to our proportion of our budget and how it's being allocated versus other things that don't have headline ability but that still need funding. But my biggest concern is the process that has been chosen to do this, the idea of a carve-out that says this program will get its money first and everybody else has to compete for what's left. And that's not a good way to build a budget. So in sum, that's why I reached the conclusion that just I can't support this.
Thank you. Jim, anything?
A couple of comments and reaction, just some general statements. First of all, one of the reasons for this was, I think Mr. Eichelberger has this backwards, in terms of what comes first. Everything else, has been the case in just about every year I've been here with respect to the question about farmland preservation. Funding for farmland preservation becomes a whipping boy. And yet we're talking about a relatively small contribution for what is supposed to be a key priority and one of the priorities that we've established in the county. Commissioner Eichelberger mentioned the fact that he has a question about the public opinion with respect to this issue. Well, there's a lot of things we never ask anybody about at all that we spend a lot of money on. In this case, we had a comprehensive plan. Thousands of our citizens responded. A significant majority, I think 90%, said that they support farmland preservation as something that we should pursue here in Cumberland County. Now, the resolution, the original resolution that I proposed would have, talked in terms of providing for 1% of the county budget, which would have provided the county general fund budget about $870,000 annually. So that there would be some uniformity, some consistency with respect to, what the county allocated for farmland preservation. And I don't think that 1% of the county budget is enough. I don't think it leads to a tax increase, and I also believe that there's a lot of other things that, you know, when taken together, would, you know, someday lead to another tax increase. And then Commissioner DiFilippo suggested that, well, instead of doing 1% of the county budget, let's take a look at a piece of the existing county real estate tax. And I think where we ended up was, well, what's the goal? What are we trying to achieve here? Okay. In fact, that was a question that Commissioner Eichelberger asked a few years ago when the Agricultural Land Preservation Board came back with a goal that we should preserve, you know, 50% of all the remaining prime farmland in Cumberland County over a 20-year period. But, you know, I know that Commissioner Eichelberger had some objections to that goal. He didn't think that was realistic. This proposal, what it does, you know, it says that we're going to take, you know, and utilize all available resources. It is a county program, therefore there should be a general fund contribution. And what it says is that we're going to, on a near equal basis, try to preserve 900 acres annually, commencing in the 2020 program year, so that by the year 2030, we will have preserved at least 30,000 acres in this county. Now that's 30,000 acres out of 150-some thousand acres of prime farmland that's out there. I don't think that's a lot to ask for, but it is a 50% increase in the number of acres that it's taken Cumberland County to preserve over the past 30 years in the next 10 years. So, you know, it's a step forward. I think that as far as the policy goes, Mr. Eichelberger is correct. Any board, any future board can change this one way or another. Maybe the next board will decide that, hey, you know, 30,000 acres in 10 years isn't enough. We should be doing a heck of a lot more than that. Or maybe they'll say that, well, we don't want to spend any money on farmland preservation in Cumberland County. I don't know. I have no idea. But I do know this, that for my time serving on this board, every year this has been kicked around like a political football. And I think it's important, you know, that we establish, if it is a priority, okay, what are we trying to achieve? And I think we've come up with a reasonable, and I'll call it compromise. It's achievable and it's also fiscally responsible in my view. And we are, you know, with this resolution, I believe, if it's adopted, bring some deliberate meaning to the statement that farmland preservation is a county priority. So I was hoping we would have a unanimous vote on this compromise today. And I'm disappointed that we apparently will not have a unanimous vote, but in any event, I think it's the right thing to do. It gives clear direction to our finance department and planning department as to what the objective is. And again, if a future board wants to change direction, that's entirely up to that board. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Jim. Stephanie, at our last meeting, I think you or maybe both of you said that this policy would not require any increase in personnel. Is that a true statement?
Yes, that is correct. That's what we believe. Looking back at the last 3 years of land that was preserved, this year is about 1,255. The year before that, 950, and the year before that, 872, which is in line with what it would be proposed going forward.
And the numbers should reflect that instead of dodging.
The two I noticed the last 5 years, we have averaged 877 acres preserved per year. For the next 10 years, if you want to do it year by year by year, we have to average about 870. So we're on target already. This resolution has been open for comments and changes for 2 weeks. We put in quite a bit of edits and revisions. My reason for going to vote for this has nothing to do with politics, but it has more to do with common sense. Farmland preservation funding is discretionary. It's not part of the budget process, at least up front. It's always in the rear. This will put it up front with just about everything else. I think too, it will help future boards. And if we ever come to a situation where the county's finances are just going to tank, we have many options to address that. And even our solicitor said a future board can come in and change this. And there we go. What else do I want to say? We'll make it easier for future boards. I think it'll be easier for our staff to do their budgets. They don't do a resolution just for ease. But I think what this does is make a commitment for our county that this program is important to us. And it certainly does so, in my opinion, without any unusual budgetary constraints. To me, the reason I'm approving is this should have been done years ago, in my opinion. So that's pretty much my comments for that.
I'm just gonna add, that being a whipping boy tells me that $500,000 a year, and that's a pretty good deal for a whipping boy. Playing political football is awarding $500,000 or more a year, then I want to be part of that game. So we should stop poor mouthing. This program has got a ton of money, and candidly, common sense to me does say that your largest discretionary item will be placed after you have a clear vision of your financial condition and all of your needs are met. That's what discretionary is. So we can differ on that. We don't need to sit here and debate back and forth. I think it's pretty clear where this is going.
Any other comments, Jim?
No, I would just like to say that, I mean, first of all, in terms of other carve-outs, we have other carve-outs in the budget. We have other discretionary funding as well, much larger than what we're suggesting here.
What discretionary items do we have that we automatically put first and create a big block for?
Well, how about employee wage increases for one?
That's not discretionary.
What do you mean it's not discretionary?
You can't move that up and down. You have contractual commitments. Unless you're gonna go into layoffs,
No.
which we've never done.
No, it's conditioned on how much money we have in the bank. Right? And I would,
Well, they
we, our
form-
employees deserve to have, adequate salaries. I'm just saying, you made a comment that we don't have any other carve-outs. We have a number of carve-outs in the budget, and a lot of them are a lot bigger than what we're asking for farmland preservation.
Those are not programmatic carve-outs.
Okay, any other comments, gentlemen? Thank you both for your comments. We have a motion, and we have a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All opposed. Motion passes by a vote of 2 to 1. All right, next on the agenda is the Financial Analysis Committee. Thank you, Joe.
Just the very last page change, we added Perry County
Oh, thank you.
on there. So-
So in other words, it's good I didn't check the last page to find out how that is.
Yes. A really big change.
Jim just asked us to add Perry County.
I just thought if we had all the other bordering counties, we should have fairly included as well.
I think one of the reasons that we didn't include Perry is their data is usually late, so the data that's in there is 17, not 18. So I think that might be part of the reason, but it doesn't change. So we're ready to get going on a lighter note. During this presentation, we'll give an overview of the current year status, year-end projections, and four-year forecasting. And as normal, it is kind of the midpoint of what we expect to happen. We have a lot of different projects going on, some major ones, and as they shift and change, the projections may change in a material manner. The data is presented from the focal point of the general fund, and the fund balance in this presentation is the general fund, unassigned fund balance, plus the assigned for future budgetary requirements. Some of the county highlights, we've had no millage change since 2014. The 7th court begins January of 2020. Public safety is in the planning process for the P25 project, and we're currently doing consulting, and we're expecting some towers renovations to start occurring next year. Public safety is implementing their new CAD system. We have fully implemented Cronus countywide. The nursing home has several big changes happening. One of them is managed Medicaid, January 2020, plus they have other funding and regulatory changes. We have the purchase order cut for the election equipment. We're expecting to receive it in 2019, potentially a grant in 2020. And for our projections, we have the election equipment being paid for in 19, the grant revenue in 20, and if we would move forward with purchasing with debt, we would have to make an adjustment, but it's kind of the midpoint of what we expect to happen. We also have 4 bridges moving into the construction phase in 2020, and on the criminal justice side of the equation, we have many pressure points, but the opioid crisis is still front and center. This is showing you the healthcare trends for the last 10 years. We switched to self-insurance in 2018. When we did that, keep in mind that we added some additional expenses that we're paying out of the premium revenues, some employee costs and some other expenses, and that's so that we can maximize reimbursements from our grants and other areas. But we are expecting about a 7.7% increase or $1 million to the general fund and premium costs next year.
David, can I interrupt?
Yes.
Is that increase, I don't know if you know, is it due to this use of benefits?
So it is a combination of things, and starting next year, we're gonna try to add some more graphs, because we'll have 3 full years of history. But with the premium rates, we have had a couple of bad years, and it's unfortunate that it's our first years out that we're having high claims. Over time, we would like to build a little bit of a balance so that we flatten the premium increases to kind of do more of a trend line. We have a couple of good years, have a couple of bad years, and you kind of keep a steady increase. We also added those additional expenses into this to maximize reimbursements. The other thing that also occurs is when we have turnover, we need a certain amount to fund the program. And if we have turnover or some positions sit vacant, we may have to raise rates to change that funding gap. So we're gonna start showing a number of people in the program, because currently we're expecting that to go down a little bit.
Going down just slightly, there's been a trend moving from families dropped a little bit and singles come up, so there's been a shift just in the coverage options.
So it does require more analysis now than just the premiums in the past, because we were paying to a third party. Now is, are we growing the fund balance? Do we have enough fund balance? Is there a change in the demographics? All of those things become more important. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is showing the actuary determined contributions since 2011, formerly known as ORN. It's increasing 20% countywide between 2019 and 20, and this is still a budgetary estimate. We won't know the actual requirement until it's usually around May of 2020 that we find out. And historically, that has dropped a little bit. But it's all dependent on the market conditions and different things. But if you notice, we are still substantially below 2011 through 2013 rates, and we did have a pretty good dip in 2018. So some of that uptick is because of the dip. So then we have two major projects that have some differences happening than traditional. One is the election machines, the other is the P25. So with the election machines, we have the expense occurring in 2019 and potentially grant funding in 2020. And so that creates a disconnect and a temporary substantial dip in fund balance with a bounce back. We're recommending that if the grant comes through and we believe that we're going to receive it in 2020, that we temporarily move assigned fund balance to keep the fund balance from having a big up and down. It's just kind of smoothing, putting the expense and the revenue in the same year. And that's normally how grant funding works, but because the state hasn't approved it yet. And then, of course, if something would change and we know that we're going to do that, we would make those adjustments also. And then on the P25 project, we are expecting some of the expenditures to occur in 2020 with the debt issuance at the beginning of 2021. The P25 project actually sits in capital projects, so the general fund would have to temporarily subsidize that cash flow, and that's what the assigned capital is actually for. So we would, in 1 year, we would move the cash flow in, the next year we would move it back out. And so with those two major projects, we are spanning 3 years. We think it's important to kind of do this fund balance smoothing so it doesn't look like we're eroding fund balance too quickly, or in 5 years when we go back to do an analysis, it's hard to determine what actually occurred. So, and of course we would adjust depending on what the actual circumstances are in those time frames. And changes to these projects can materially affect our projections. So when we get to page 9, this slide is showing our previous projections from the spring to our current projections and the major changes. Our revenues overall are increasing about $500,000. The majority of that's related to the HAVA grant. On the expense side of the equation, our expenses are decreasing about $3.4 million. That's benefits $200,000, capital about $100,000. The majority of the change is related to that transfer from assigned fund balance that I talked about earlier for the election equipment. And on the next page, it shows you what, on page 11. Page 11. Get there. Oh. On page 11, it's showing the fund balance over the years. That's showing a $34.5 million fund balance at the end of 19 with 144 days. This page 12 is showing the fund balance thermometer and where we expect to end the year. The comparison between our 18 actuals and where we expect to end 2019 overall, revenues are increasing about $1.2 million. The majority of that is related to the real estate tax revenue, and that's 1.8%. That's a combination of increases to the assessment base, but also our collections have increased a little bit.
So we're expecting to see a natural growth in real estate revenues of about $1 million.
Yes. It's a combination of natural growth, plus our collections are up a little bit. Then on the expense side of the equation, overall the expenditures are increasing $4.4 million. Salary and benefits are $2 million. And we did talk about the medical and
Going back for a second, the collections are up, what collections are you referring to?
Real estate tax.
Oh, okay, so that's a timing issue, I mean, we collect anyhow, so,
Yes.
but it's,
Right. But if I just look straight at growth,
yeah.
we would be sitting at hitting our budget target. We would be dead on for
Mhm.
the budget.
Okay.
But based on our collections for the past 4 or 5 years, if we collect at the same rate between now and the year end, we'll have collected more money, and we'll have less in our,
That's
Payroll.
people who are paying on time.
yes,
Okay.
we have more people paying on time.
Do we have an idea what our percentages of people who pay outside of the prescribed time?
I believe I want to say it's less than 3%.
It's pretty low.
Was it? It
Still
might
low.
be in that report that you have in front of you. To your right, right there, that, it might be in there. but I
This is
think
from 2016, which I have a question for, to ask you later.
We do have it in one of our reports.
That's okay.
It's
That's-
something
that's-
Terry
that's-
does.
I just wanted to clarify that it's, we're gonna get that money anyhow, it's just a matter of when.
Do you know, Dana, just to follow up on that, is, so what part of the $936,518 in projected, natural revenue growth, or how much of that is from better collections? Do we know?
No, and that's gonna be a very difficult number to pull,
Okay.
because you have properties added mid-year and,
Yeah, I'm just wondering how much of it, if you can get a handle on how much of it is from, because you're saying our collection rate is pretty much close to 100%. So I'm just wondering how much of that 936,000 projected increase natural growth, how much of that is from natural growth?
I will try to get you a number, but it's gonna be an estimate. I
Okay.
can't I'm not gonna be able to say that this is 100% from collections, because it does change from year to year, our percentage, but it was hanging, I believe, a little above 3%, and now we're a little below. And we do that update based on year ends, the most recent numbers I would have would be from 18. And so 19 is the year that I'm expecting that to change, and we won't know until we actually get there, so I'm doing an estimate on something that hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
Okay. So overall, we're expecting expenses to increase by $4.4 million, salary and benefits $2 million, operating about $650,000, subsidies for children and youth and criminal justice programs about $600,000, capital about $300,000. The transfers and debt are decreasing about $1.5 million, and that's due to making the final payments offset by the savings and the upticks of refinancings. And the biggest change is the additional impact of the assigned fund balance in the election. Now we're getting into 2020. So on page 18, the first column of numbers is the 2020 budget as it currently stands. It is $86 million in revenue and just over $92 million of expenditures. And then the second column of numbers is the projected of 2020. And the revenue is almost exactly what the budgeted revenue is. On the expenditure side of the equation, it's about $88 million in expenditures, with the biggest, when I run through the changes, the biggest change is gonna be that assigned fund balance. But on the revenue side, it's increasing 0.26%. Operating is decreasing $3 million. The majority of that is related to our contingency. Subsidies are decreasing $400,000, and capital is decreasing about $1 million. We are expecting that $1 million in projects to happen, but the funding will be transferred out of restricted fund balance. It's canteen funding and Farmland. And then, of course, the assigned fund balance. We are expecting to end the year at about just under a $33 million fund balance. is 130 days. Okay, and next is the comparison of our 19 projections to our 2020 projections. And we're estimating a 1.3% increase in real estate tax. And that is assessment based to assessment based, no change in collections. Other revenue is increasing 2.3 million, and that is due to the capital grant for the election equipment. On the expenditure side of the equation, salaries are increasing about 3.5%, and benefits 11%, and the graphs at the beginning kind of show the increases in retirement and health insurance. Operating is increasing just under 3%. Subsidies are increasing about $1.4 million. The majority of that is related to children and youth, and it's directly because of the overmatch that we received for the past 2 years. So it's a bounce back. The capital's decreasing about $500,000 for the 7th court, and our transfers and debt are decreasing about another $700,000.
When you join front out about the overmatch, the next.
We're kind of looking at that now, and they're not expecting a whole bunch for,
1819. We're pretty much going to break even. She said maybe 50,000. It's not the number of the 900 million we saw in the past.
and the needs-based budget usually takes about 2 years to catch up. So we'll see a year or two probably that we're pretty close, and then we'll start seeing that overmatch increase again. And for the past 2 overmatches, the state has been very quick to pay us back. And sometimes it takes a substantial amount of time to get it back, but they were very quick. We had the one already.
And 78.
Thank you.
So on page 24, it's just the graphical representation of fund balance and the change. So we are expecting it to decrease about $1.8 million between 19 and 20, and that's about 14 days or 9.7% reduction.
Dana, that 2020 projected unsigned fund balance number does include the grant from the state for the voting machines, correct?
Correct. But it assumes that we purchase it. We purchase the election machine.
Right.
If we do that.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And then the next 2 graphs really haven't changed from the last time, so for time's sake, we can skip over them unless you have specific questions. The next page is the cost drivers for merit-based compensation formula. The 2019 merit-based compensation to be paid in 2020, based on the funding formula, the June CPI was 1.6%. Fund balance over 100 days is $10,763,687, or 2.7%. The anchor is 4.3%. For 2020 to be paid in 21, 100 days of fund balance based on where the budget currently stands is $25,266,600. And if we adjust the budget, we would adjust that number.
Forgive me, the 100 days, is that what's in our budget policy?
Yes.
It's what's in the funding formula.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And this is just showing the millage changes since 2009, and there have only been 3 changes since 2009, out of 12 years, 3 changes. So we've shown this graph a few times, and the trends continue to be good. Our assessment base is continuing to grow, the building permits are high. It's exactly what we want to see. I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about our TIF. Our tax increment financing, I have been referring to as the PIV, and everybody looks at me like I'm crazy. Yep.
Like the PIV?
Yeah, I keep
What
getting
does
the
that stand
TIF,
for?
and it's TIF, But PIB is our new financing for liquid fuels, and I keep mixing the
I see,
acronyms.
okay. So PIP stands for something.
Because on here I have PIB, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm doing it wrong
I
again.
thought that was Pennsylvania Infrastructure Bank.
That's one of the,
That's one of them, yeah.
So there's only one bid.
one of everything.
Yeah.
Government.
So the TIF
thing.
is ramping up.
Samantha, you need to get working on that glossary of the acronyms.
Yeah.
DOA.
Already
Look
done.
back at this, DOA.
Oh, that can have multiple ones too.
Good, okay, here we go.
Yeah,
No problem.
so the TIF, we're starting to get some growth in the assessment phase. So in the future, we're gonna have to adjust some of our projections to pull out the growth from the TIF, so it's not impacting, we don't get to keep that revenue. So we're gonna work on ways to show that you can tell what the growth is that we keep versus the growth is that we're turning over to the TIF.
How far out did you generally project
The growth for our
Yeah.
taxes, we go 5 years.
5 or so.
Is that,
The
is
next
that,
one was 5.
this is for Carlisle, right, the TIF in Carlisle?
Yes.
Okay. And that ends,
I believe it's
10 years or
15
something?
We have it all.
or 15
well
years,
documented.
what is it, 10 or 15?
I believe it's 15.
It doesn't.
10, yeah, we have it. So we'll have to break that out, because some of the growth that you're seeing includes the TIF. It's not material currently,
Right.
but it may be material in the
Gotcha.
future.
Yeah. Okay.
And now I'm going to turn to the
Some of the major assumptions in the projections, there's been a few changes. The election machines will be funded 60% from the state, that's in the projections. Farmland is projected at $500,000 per year. Capital is increased from the previous presentations, all based on the updated 5-year plans that departments have submitted. And 911 will need subsidy for any of their capital projects, it's not related to the rate. Current projections that do not include estimates for timing and financing of all the projects on our next slide, that it will have an impact in the future. And the projections are always based on aggressive management of our cost drivers, as we've done in the past. Some of the major pressure points, the election machines, farmland preservation, the 7th court with renovations and additional personnel, the radio project and 2 bonds for it, the 911 CAD replacement, radio infrastructure, one of the fastest growing counties, so that has an effect on our pressure points, the state budget, CNRC, and capital bases. This next slide showing the projections for 2019 through 2023. 19, we're projecting to end at 34.5 million and 144 days of fund balance. In the projections out through 2023, IMTO, we've listed out some of their major projects, the 7th court personnel, additional. CNRC and children and youth are always areas that we keep an eye on and watch. Out in 2023, we're projected to end at 15.9 million in 63 days. And the projections are a midpoint of the range, so they could be higher or lower, but this is where we expect the midpoint to be. In the projections, some of the assumptions that are in the projections, salary at 3.5% increase for 2020, and 3.2% for 21 through 23. And it's all based on union contracts, the merit-based compensation, overtime. Benefits, there's an 11% increase in 2020 and 5.11% for 21 through 23. When you break down the benefits, medical insurance, we have a 10.5 in 2020 and 7% in the out years. And retirement, a 19.5 in 2020 and 1% in the out years. Hopefully it levels off here a little bit. Operating, 2.8% in 2020 and 1.3% in the out years. And for subsidy, 20.2% in 2020, drops to 12.8 in 21. and 5.7 in 22 and 23. And capital's all projected based on history and known capital projects from the 5-year plans that were submitted. 911 radio project assumptions is all pending board of commissioner approval. $10 million bond in 2021, a $7 million bond in 2022, with the first payment in 23. And as the project's developed and moving on, we'll adjust the projections accordingly. We'll offset project costs with assigned fund balance in the general fund in addition to bond financing. P25 is in the development process, and there's a high probability of things changing, project costs, funding formula changes, timing of them, which will all have a material effect on our projection.
And so with the assigned fund balance in the general fund for the P25 project, we're holding that money for ineligible pieces of the project because the 911 surcharge revenue can pay for the eligible costs bond payments. So we're trying to maximize our reimbursement for that.
So the slide's a graphical of our fund balance out through 2023. You can see in 23 at 15.9 million. We're in the red zone with 63 days of fund balance, which is 7 days below our minimum cash flow needs. This next slide is a graphical of the projections with the red bars being revenue, the blue is expense. The green line is showing you our current projections. The yellow is from April, our spring presentation, and black was a year ago.
Can I stop you right here? I'm looking at a similar chart from 3 years ago, June of 2016. It has the same actuals and projections, only it's 2011 through 2020. This was 2014 through 2023. And what I noticed is that the numbers projected 3 years ago for 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, the fund balance is significantly less than the actuals that occur and what's being projected for 2020, 2021. Well, I can't go to 21, but what I'm saying is 3 years ago, our fund balance was predicted to be significantly lower than it is today. Now, I'm sure I'm missing something here, but is that due to maybe we're just being a little over conservative? Is it due to some expenses that I missed? A combination of both? I mean, I'd rather you be more conservative, don't get me wrong, but,
Well, there's a lot of things that have changed.
okay.
One is the 911 funding. That's a substantial change in our projections because we went from funding, expecting a $2 to $3 million subsidy down to $500,000. So that, and early when we were getting that surcharge, we really didn't know if that was going to continue to fund for the long haul. We don't think we were going to change the expenditure. So when we first started projecting that revenue source, we were conservative. And it has been, the only piece that we've been subsidizing right now is the ineligible piece. So all eligible expenses are covered, and that's a substantial shift. And that may be one of the biggest shifts that we've had. I mean, that's $3 million is how many percent is that? A 6% shift. And when you get in the next couple of pages and you see what 1 or 2% shift does, that was a material shift. Then we also.
It's something we could have done at the time, but then interested we budgeted conservatively on the assumption that we wouldn't get it.
Correct.
But we fortunately got it.
Yes.
Okay, that'd make up $11 million because,
And each year, yeah, it compounds itself
okay,
because it's an ongoing shift.
okay.
The other major change that we've had is we were in overmatch with children and youth, and we were made whole, and there's no guarantee that that's gonna happen. So with every shift into overmatch, until we start seeing what the current historically, there have been times when we've actually had to start the appeal procedures to get that money, and it can take years. Well, we received it quickly. So those are probably the two biggest shifts. We also did a substantial amount of bond refinancings where we saved a few $1 million. So all of those things shift our projections. So our goal is to find ways to shift our projections to avoid tax increases. The other thing is court costs and fines are up, and that's another big shift.
Yeah. Okay, well, I appreciate that it explains that it's about an $11 million difference.
And our goal is to never get to the red. So that's why we're showing you where we stand now. We always go out one term. So it's never, you're not ever looking at just the term you're in. It's the next word.
This serves as an excellent example that luck and circumstances can big portions of the whole budgetary process as well as diligence. So,
And there's a
This
lot
is
of.
good, I like, that helps me understand
We
the
were-
change.
Yeah, we were also expecting to have to open another window of prison,
Right.
and like, there's a whole bunch of things that we were able to.
so the question I have is, if I'm reading this correctly, so 2020 represents now the first year in which expenses exceed revenues?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Would imply that that gives to draw down the reserve.
Reserve.
So the 100 days target, we're gonna start getting closer to that rather than the 120 or whatever it is
Correct.
we have now. Okay.
And we update these formally twice a year, but we're also doing them quarterly, based on what's occurring.
And this includes, I'm sure it does, the P25, that's the election machines, what else?
It does not include the nursing home requiring subsidy, so that would occur, that would substantially change this. It is including some shifts in children and youth increasing slowly over time.
The IGT is in
The
this.
IGT is in this. In addition, public safety, I believe we are estimating that we will have to subsidize a portion of the bond payments for the radio project.
Here's a question. And I know our practice is to budget conservatively, so,
I say about the same.
okay, but, so this all assumes that there is no general fund subsidy to collect money.
Correct.
Okay. Is that a reasonable expectation looking out 3 years based on what we know?
Based on what I know right now, no. But managed Medicaid, depending on what rates they negotiate and where they stand with that potentially, and if they're successful at getting a little bit more Medicare skilled in there, there's some changes to the funding that if they're able to maximize on that, we could turn it around.
So we basically want to wait and see, to see how this pans out. So,
But based on their current budget, they're running out of funding the end of 20.
end of 20. Okay. So
They
at some point we need
they
to.
don't require subsidy, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
No, that's right, that's helpful. So at some point, we need to make a decision on whether to start building subsidy into this, so that we're not caught flat for it.
But we've
When-
also been here before and able to shift things, so
Yeah,
we're sending the caution signs up, and we have been with Raymond, and he's
Right.
looking at some different things to try to shift that around.
well, we are painfully aware there's a lot of challenges out there, capital-wise and
Yes.
and so forth, operations-wise as well for Cumberland. So I would not want to see us choose not to put in there something that should be in there, but we don't know that yet, I understand it. So my question is, the Medicare rates that are under negotiation, when do we expect to have more clarity on what those numbers will
We
be?
currently have a company negotiating on our
Right.
behalf,
Yeah.
and,
Timelines.
I'm hoping soon, but I'm not sure what the timeline is.
So in the next few months, we'll have more
We should have
clarity,
looking into
what our
it.
budget impact. Thank you. That's all.
I believe we're gonna get our current rates. I don't think we'll be successful.
Current rates, okay.
With a
That's
little
not
bit of
good.
inflation.
So that's not good.
But we have a good team working on our behalf, so if there's any,
Well, we won't jump the gun. We'll give them a reasonable chance. Okay, another thing hanging out there in the future for us. All right, thank you.
The next slide is showing projections, the first line's showing the projections the way they are with no changes each year. The blue numbers underneath are the difference between revenue and expense. For a break even, if we want to break even each year, and stay about the $34 million, it takes the 3% change in 20, 5 and 21, 2 and 22, and 1 and 23. And keep in mind, it changes an ongoing change in expenses or revenues.
So the cumulative impact, meaning if you delay one of these for a year or two, these numbers change completely. Okay.
So this next slide with the tree projections, the first line showing you projections with no change. And then the middle section, we staggered some of the percentages. First one, change in 2021, 3%. It takes an 8% in 2023 to keep us in the green zone. So the next one, we start to change in 2022 at 5%, so it takes a 5% and a 7% in 2023 to keep us in the green zone. On the third one down, we don't start till 2023, takes a 17% change to get us back in the green zone. And in 2021, we did a 6%. 6% in 2021 will still keep us in the green zone in 2023. So it just kind of shows you the impact of when you make the change, what the impact has in the future. We did a 4% and 5% just in 2020, just to kind of so you can see the impact of the changes and what kind of effect they have on it and the timing of them. This next slide, first one again is the current assumptions. We did two different scenarios where we did a 1% positive change in 2020 and then a negative 1% impact in 2020. So you can kind of see what a positive 1% change and a negative 1% change is. And 1% is about $546,000 change. And then we also did a 2% change. So if there was a 2% positive change or a 2% negative change, you can see what kind of a change that has in the out year that the 2% will do, and that's about $1,100,000 change, ongoing change. And both the 1% and 2% scenarios here are within our projection range. We always show you the midpoint, but this is kind of, they're all within the range, both the 1% and 2% scenarios. We also did a graphical representation of what $1 million positive change would look like, so you can see it in graphical format, that a $1 million positive change will get us out of the red zone in 2023. But then on the flip side, a $1 million negative change, we drop even a little bit further. The solid bars are the current projection, and the straight bars are the $1 million change on there.
It's important to know, these are within our projection ranges because lots of things occur every year that are out, even outside of our control. If you have a big year with court cases, or it could drive these numbers very quickly up or down. We've been very fortunate for about the past 5 or 6 years and not had any major pressure points. We've had pressure points, but not.
And again,
all
we've
at
heard of
once.
the $1 million change, that could be tax increase or spending time.
Right.
It could be a,
Or a combination, and
It could just be that we start seeing increases because CPI is increasing. There's subcontractors
Right.
and vendors, supplies start costing.
So this slide showing the comparative tax rate for the third-class counties. In Cumberland County is the lowest of all the third-class counties, with the lowest property tax per capita, with the lowest on the average tax per household for median household income, the lowest in the average tax per household. And then the last slide, when you compare us to the surrounding counties, we're still the lowest. We actually actually have the highest median household income of the surrounding counties.
Perry County.
The Perry County, and I gave them that table. Perry's not on the selection. Any questions?
Do we have the data prepared?
We had, it was on the new one that I gave you guys.
That's the change in the last
It's
page.
a change in that last page that has Perry County on there.
Okay.
And that data's from 2017, everybody else is. Any questions?
You answered mine. Guys, have any questions? Yep.
Okay, good. I have to say, I think that, since I've been here, we're probably in the best financial shape that we've ever been in those 8 years. So in terms of where we stand, financially. And we're looking, and I think that's pretty significant, looking for no tax increase for the 6th year in a row.
Correct.
That doesn't mean that we're going to have to increase taxes next year.
Okay, any other questions?